President Trump had a strange session with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, claiming, despite his guest's denials, that white genocide is rampant in that country. Trump was triggered by a question from NBC White House reporter Peter Alexander.
Can you explain to Americans why it's appropriate to welcome white Afrikaners here when other refugees like Afghans, Venezuelans, Haitians have all had their protected status revoked?
Well, this is a group, NBC, that is truly fake news. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you.
Despite many media reports that there is no white genocide in South Africa, Trump played a video purporting to show mass graves and other signs of murders targeting whites.
They take the land, they kill the white farmer, and when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is quite...
Nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now been utilizing...
The farmers are not black.
I spoke earlier with Sarah Bedford, investigations editor at the Washington Examiner, and Ameshia Cross, political analyst for SiriusXM. Sarah, Ameshia, welcome. Sarah, every article I've read, and I've researched this, says there is no white genocide in South Africa, that there are murders, that there is crime, but mostly aimed at the majority black community. So are the media right to challenge President Trump on this?
Well, look, I think that the situation in South Africa doesn't fit a sort of clean narrative on either side of the aisle. It's a really complicated situation. You have the legacy of apartheid. You have, the conditions imposed by the South African government. But what the media likes to do a lot whenever Donald Trump claims anything is to throw in these phrases like claims without evidence, unsubstantiated claims.
Well, where is the evidence?
Donald Trump wheeled out a screen into the Oval Office and played, video evidence. He held up a lot of written print evidence. He provided all of that, and yet you still saw the characterizations of his claims.
Well, you're calling it evidence, but Ameshia, a fact sheet put out by the White House had a New York Times piece, and I clicked on it, and it said false claims. I mean, this is a propaganda video put out by one of the opponents of the South African president, and these aren't real graves, for example. They were props used in a protest.
Yeah, and that's why Trump decided to use them. I don't think that he didn't know where they came from. When we talk about evidence, evidence leads to a basis of fact. These are all props. First and foremost, many of those pictures weren't even from South Africa. There are some that are from the Congo. There's chants that were made during apartheid that he's utilizing as something that was made over false claims of mass deaths, mass graves, and genocide against white Afrikaners. That is factually incorrect. We've heard it from the president of South Africa. We've heard it from the interior leader of South Africa. We've heard it time and time again. It is factually just not true. What Trump was doing was spreading his white nationalism narrative on the mainstream and across the globe. All of what he said and the evidence that he presented was sheerly a prop. It was incorrect, and it needed to be fact-checked.
I think you're going to want to respond to that.
Well, look, I think that, like I mentioned, this is a really complicated situation. There are laws that have been passed by the South African government. Well, sure, you're right that the video footage did misconstrue some of the images that showed. But I do think that the narrative is a lot more complicated than this just being a product of white supremacy.
The only narrative he is using is one that is based on something that is a blatant lie. There is no mass genocide of white Afrikaners, point blank, period. It is not happening.
Well, the Afrikaners and their advocates in the international community do say that they are being targeted because of their race in South Africa, and beyond that, that they're being economically disenfranchised by Ramaphosa's government.
Evidence does not.
There are fringe groups that sing these songs from the apartheid era, but they say they're not really calling for violence. Now, Ameshia, why did the president unload on NBC's Peter Alexander for just raising this question about letting in white South Africans but not minorities from some of these other countries?
Because Donald Trump doesn't want to be questioned, because he is someone who
talks to the press all the time.
He has led an anti-immigrant narrative since before he got elected. He did this in 2016. He's done it again during his campaign in 2024. And at this point, he sees this as one of the things that he can, put a feather in his hat on when it comes to American foreign policy. He is absolutely fine, and again, he said this in previous administration, letting in or seeing a pathway to reservation here for those who come from European countries. For him, immigration and anti-immigrant sentiment only rests when the immigrant is black or brown. If the immigrant is white, we see him with a more friendly tone. That is not a new narrative. It's one he's carried for quite some time.
You know, Elon Musk, who of course is from South Africa, he started posting on X about the alleged white genocide back in 2023, and Trump told reporters in the Oval Office that this is what Elon wants. So I suspect that that's part of the motivating factor here.
Sure. I mean, the day before Donald Trump signed that order in February, ordering his administration to expedite bringing the Afrikaners to the U.S., he had Elon Musk with him in the Oval Office. They were posting, Instagram pictures together. This is something that Elon Musk has pushed. Other figures on the right have pushed. But I think that the media tends to do this. If something originates on the sort of right side of the disparate media ecosystem, the podcasts and what have you, it's automatically discredited in their eyes, no matter if it ends up being true. I mean, you saw that with Biden's age, for example. Questions about his age and his inability to do the job originated on the right. And so the media treated them as not credible because of the source. And
not
I think
all of the media, but yes, you have an absolute point.
Of course, not Fox, but a lot.
And that didn't turn out too well for the Fourth Estate. But, there's been chatter about this new law that the president of South Africa, I guess, signed, allowing seizure of land from farmers, most of whom are white, and others, with compensation in some cases. But the U.S. has similar laws, and Donald Trump, as a developer, has used them. So that's another point for us to consider.
Absolutely. I mean, asset forfeiture goes back. It's a tale as old as time. It has happened across multiple demographics, across multiple regions and countries, not only here, but around the globe. That's nothing new. What is being argued here by Donald Trump and by his administration is that there is systemic abuse. There is genocide of a specific population where it is not actually happening. Yes, there's been some seizure of land. There's been seizure of black farmers' land as well in South Africa. What is the problem here is this gross overestimation and, quite frankly, just a blatant lie. And Trump is known for doing those, and he presented evidence that was not actually factual.
I do want to get to another story involving Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, who got into a clash with ICE agents outside an immigrant detention facility in Newark. And the Justice Department has filed assault charges against her, allegedly for going after these ICE agents. You've seen the video of this.
We were trying to ask questions, trying to get explanation from the officials that were there, and it was just so chaotic. And ICE and Homeland Security definitely escalated the situation, caused the chaos and the confrontation.
If you look at this and the body cam footage, and there was a lot of video evidence here, it's very inconvenient for her because she is clearly not de-escalating the situation.
The current president has already admitted to the goal of abusing power, to target opponents and Democrats, to go after people, to intimidate.
Sarah, let me start with you. The video was first obtained by Fox. What's your take on it?
Look, I think this is a pretty straightforward application of the law here, right? She's alleged to have shoved a law enforcement officer. Video footage backs that up. And you keep seeing, the media is frequently portraying this as a highly unusual prosecution, right? Because it's not typical that a member of Congress is prosecuted for something other than fraud.
It's unusual.
But it is a pretty usual application of assault laws, right? If someone shoves a law enforcement officer, that is against the law, and it is typically prosecuted, especially when there's video footage supporting it. So in that sense, it's a pretty straightforward reading. The
president said that the MacGyver is out of control and the days of this crap are over. But Ameshia, to me, it looks like a giant scrum of people like trying to get on the D train in New York. Whether she shoved or whether she's just pushing ahead and they're pushing back, nobody was injured. That makes it a little bit more unusual.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was a ton of people in a very condensed space where there was some shuffling back and forth. I would not consider that assault. What we are seeing is Donald Trump and his administration use her as an example because they want to thwart any elected official who decides to fight for and protect individuals who are having their rights circumvented when it comes to due process. And I think that it's very frustrating because he's, again, trying to stop other people. He's using her as a symbol. And it's one of those things where he wants to be able to circumvent the law. He wants to be able to stop it at all of its functions and to only have power vested in him, which is against the Constitution, which is against our checks and balances system. And this is a guy who, again, is utilizing her as a prop.
I've got half a minute for each of you. Sarah, the president's detractors in the media are saying this is an intimidation tactic against a lawmaker from the other party.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, you see it portrayed that way. You see it frequently described as retaliation. I don't think that this is not a member of Congress who was a sort of a household name or seen as a Democratic leader. So, you know, retaliating for what? She's not a threat to his political agenda, but she did cause and was a part of disruption outside of an ICE facility. And the Trump administration is saying we're not going to tolerate interfering in our biggest policy priority.
Ameshia.
So I find this a very interesting argument because I do agree with you in part because there is a narrative and there should be a pushback against violence, especially when it happens on government property or with a government official. However, I would argue that we didn't hear any of that from you guys on January 6th, where we also had video of people literally assaulting Capitol Police officers. And what we saw from Trump, what we saw from this current administration was pardoning of those individuals who actually did have due process and were locked up for good reason. So that was one that is a case closed.
I think Republicans have spent 4 years apologizing for that and paying for that politically from the American people.
Ameshia Cross, Sarah Bedford, thanks very much for joining us.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.